English translation 61st contact, Thursday 29th July 1976, EO043 HRs.
Today I have some very specific questions regarding Venus and the Destroyer, as well as the floods and other disasters. Can you give me more details about that?
Sure, if your questions are within my field of knowledge.
They will be. But first I would like to ask you for some information. You told me after my first flight with Konrad Schutzbach that you had not had time to monitor our flight. But you told me last week when I asked you a question that two of your reconnaissance ships had been watching us on 20.6. 76, just as we were flying over the Bernese Oberland Alps. Mrs.?
That is indeed as you say, but the two reconnaissance ships were not ordered to observe you. Rather, they were on a routine flight at that time. If you want to satisfy your barbaric adventures with these dangerous flying apparatuses, that is your concern, and we do not interfere.
All well roared, Lioness. Take a look at this photo. Are these the two reconnaissance ships?
Certainly, but only the ionization shells are visible.
We have seen that before. Thanks for the information. But now to the other questions. Can you tell me when the last great flood took place? Because there were several of them, so I'm not talking about the one pertaining to Noah or Noah's flood?
You are asking very illogically, because I already explained these concerns to you at the beginning of our first contacts.
Of course, but I want to hear it from you again for a reason.
As you wish, it is now about 80 years since then.
But last year you said there were 10,079? I know exactly because I looked it up.
You speak very illogically. Obviously, you are still overtired and do not recognize any logical connections.
You must be oh, I am an idiot, of course. It has been a whole year since then.
That is right, you are still really tired. I should not have called you.
Well, to make a point, because it is not that bad. This deluge, was it the only one in those 10,080 years?
No. There were not only those which you mistakenly call the Great Biblical Flood, which truly took place about 100,000 years ago, because two other somewhat smaller floods came later, once in 7957 and another time in 6906. However, none of them have anything to do with the Noah's flood, as you call it, although in this respect it is also falsely claimed that it was the biblical flood, especially the one to be dated 7957. Between the time of 7000 and 8000, there were also huge floods in the Near East and Asia, in Turkey and Persia, etc., and these floods, of which there were two, were equal to small floods. There were also great floods about 96,000 and 100,000 years ago.
Before Emmanuel's time?
No, counting back from now.
I'm getting more and more confused. Please explain to me the most important catastrophes of the last 10,080 years.
Your question is illogical.
That is daft. I am not a scientist. But with my question, I mean the most important, natural, and also man-made catastrophes.
That is logical. So listen then. I give you the dates and explanations without conversions. So as they were at the time of last year and partially of this year, the biblical flood did not take place 10,080 years ago, but took place much earlier and was triggered by the destroyer. By extremely coarse inaccuracies and corrections for the Bible, etc., these events were distorted and falsified by the old chroniclers, and thus Bible researchers and antiquity researchers chronologically set them much later and extremely erroneously.
I missed something in your explanation, which is what happened at Atlantis.
You are being very illogical today. These events took place from today calculated 11,274 years ago, so I cannot include them in the 10,080-year period.
Oh yes, sorry, I seem really stupid today.
You are just very tired. It is probably better if you go back and find enough recovery and sleep.
You might like that. I am here and I am staying here. I can do it. I just have to pull myself together a little bit. I am sorry, it really is my fault. Please tell us in turn from that time on, since Mu and Atlantis were destroyed. That is to say, from the year 9498 BC.
Whatever you want, if you are really capable of recording.
Certainly.
Then listen. Atlantis was destroyed by Mu scientists, as I explained to you recently. This was 9498 years ago BSAK, as you yourself have just correctly noticed. This was the first major catastrophe of the last 10,000 Earth years BC, 84,183 years before another great catastrophe occurred, which was of cosmic origin. Exactly 10,215 years ago, a planetoid of enormous size raced towards the Earth from the world's space and smashed down with tremendous force. It divided the waters of the Atlantic exactly there, where 84,000 years before an asteroid fragment crashed and destroyed many things worldwide, but we do not know whether this smallest planet hastened from the wide space or whether it came from the asteroid belt. After these events about 10,000 years ago, it took only about 135 years before the Earth was again afflicted by a catastrophe, bigger and more gigantic than the two before, but in today's eastern area of the Earth ball, which was flooded by enormous masses of water when the giant comet Destroyer passed the Earth in dangerous proximity 10,080 years from now calculated back. This led to worldwide catastrophes, which, however, for reasons beyond our understanding, were never recorded by the earthly chroniclers and only found their expression in writings much later, when another flood, again caused by the Destroyer, afflicted the Earth, namely 7,957 years ago. For about 1,000 years, the Earth was spared from major catastrophes until the year 6906 before 1976, when the Destroyer once again caused enormous devastation on the Earth and destroyed many things. After that, the Earth ball became very quiet, and it took until the year 3453 before another catastrophe broke out, which was again the fault of the giant comet Destroyer, which drove Venus into its present orbit and triggered the Santorini catastrophe with its massive pulling forces. In and of itself, many things and events were chronologically recorded by the Earth humans, but unfortunately, not all of them, and also not always logically, and not correctly. Many events of this kind were often written down centuries or even millennia later, falsified and unreal, and often under the guise of a chronicle, which caused enormous disservice to the earthly archaeologists and inevitably caused them errors in their calculations.
That is clear to me, but tell me, upon which data from earlier times can one most likely rely? Is it the biblical writings or the Sanskrit records?
The Sanskrit scriptures are indeed very accurate and extremely precise in certain respects, but not the Bible scriptures, for they are the most inaccurate in this respect. They are the ones which have been most falsified and interwoven with fantasy stories. Recommended are the original Enoch-Ur writings, as well as the calendar records of the old Maya tribes. Especially the last ones are the most valuable. Your data starts where the small planet races in from space and triggered the catastrophe 10,215 years ago, if I am accurately informed about these things, and do not make any miscalculations in my data. I am not that precise in my orientation, but I think my statements are at least roughly correct. Unfortunately, I have so far dealt much too little with these concerns, which is probably why I can be subject to a mistake. But my information should be pretty accurate, if I am not mistaken in the dates.
I guess I am the last earthworm to blame you for that. Can you give me more detailed data on the Destroyer and Venus? I mean, can you tell me its orbit time and its context? And can you tell me which system was Venus torn away from? You once said that the destroyer practically stole this planet from a distant system. And what about the distant systems that the destroyer goes through again and again?
I can give you very precise details about that, but we are occupied with a puzzle. It is still an unsolved mystery to us how some concerns relate to the destroyer, especially the recurring constant speed of this giant comet. Its orbit time always returns to a constant of 575.5 years. Although it has large intermediate fluctuations of up to 205 years, which means that during a few orbits it drops down to 478 years due to the mutual gravitational pull of different planets and the Sun, and it rises up to 683 years due to the reciprocal mass attraction of the Sun, and after a few orbits it returns to its constant orbit time of 575.5 years, which is very puzzling to us and finds no parallels known to us. Our scientists have calculated that this phenomenon occurs at extremely irregular intervals and that the destroyer, as soon as it has reached its 575.5-year orbital period again, comes again and again into very dangerous proximity to the Earth and mostly causes enormous destruction. According to our scientific research, the escape velocity of the SOL system plays a crucial role in this peculiar phenomenon, which moves at enormous speed towards the Hercules constellation. However, this is not the only factor, because further calculations and research show that the planetary systems of the SOL system are also decisively involved in this peculiar orbital period of the destroyer, which becomes constant again and again because, as I explained to you earlier, the giant passes through the same systems again and again.
Okay, I get that. But what about Venus?
Venus was torn out of Uranus's system by the gravitational pull effect of the destroyer and by various other factors, and drifted on the destroyer's trajectory, in its wake, so to speak, apart from the fact that the comet giant was much faster and left its appendage far behind. When Venus was torn out of the system of Uranus, it was very slow in its initial speed. This happened about 8,190 years ago from the present time, that is to say during a destroyer passage through the SOL system before it had reached the constant of 575.5 years again. In this run, the orbit of the comet was 632 years, 57 years above the constant of 575.5 years, which is so puzzling to us. Venus moved on an extremely slow elliptical orbit away from its original system and made a dangerous orbit between the other planetary systems, and thus also around the central Sun and the system Sun. This orbit paused Venus until 7,157 years ago, thus over 632 years cycle duration, when the destroyer came again and changed its orbit again and brought it on course towards Earth, while the giant itself came into dangerous proximity to the Earth and caused violent destruction and flooding. This was the second deluge of the last 12,000 years caused by the destroyer. Through these events, the destroyer once again changed its orbiting time and went through the SOL system on the next run without causing any damage, passing very far away from the Earth. Already at the next passage, however, it had the constant of 575.5 years again, namely 6,906 years ago, and again Venus got into its orbit and changed its course again, but now so much that it got into orbit near the Earth and around the central star. It stayed there until 4,058 years ago, when it was affected in its orbit again during the next passage of the giant comet. At that time, the destroyer had an orbital period of 605 years. Torn from its previous course, Venus now took a course that slowly but surely had to lead directly to Earth, which actually happened. Exactly 3,583 years ago, Venus had reached a very slow orbit, which would have led to Earth even without another appearance of the destroyer. But then, 3,453 years ago, The destroyer, which had regained the 575.5-year constant, came back, shot past the planet that was constantly thrown out of orbit at a distance of a few 100,000 kilometers, and finally tore it into its orbit, which Venus now inevitably and finally had to bring to Earth. After a short time, the destroyer shot past the Earth, in its wake Venus, which came very close to the Earth and caused the Santorini catastrophe. Since then, the destroyer has again had a very different cycle time over several rounds and has no longer affected the SOL system if minor irregularities are ignored. So it was not until 1680 that it reached the constant of 575.5 years again, when it passed through the Sol system again, but this time in an almost peaceful ride and without causing any changes. Therefore, its next run will again be 575.5 years if it reappears in 2255. What is also important and very interesting to mention is the fact that in the case of this gigantic comet, the inexplicable phenomena of the balancing constant of 575.5 years, which appears again and again, is joined by a second and equally inexplicable phenomenon, namely that the orbital period of the destroyer always and without exception balances out in such a way that two orbits always result in 1,151 years, that is to say, 575.5 years in duplicate. For example, if the cycle time is 478 years for one round, then the cycle time for the next round is 673 years with complete certainty. At least that is what the average calculations say. In any case, it is the case that even if longer non-constant circulations come to light, the years phenomenally always and without exception balance each other out again. It is a phenomenon that is known to our science as unique and actually finds no parallels at all.
That is more than grandiose, but now tell me, since when has Venus been in its current orbit?
That is included in my explanation. After passing near the Earth, it was channeled into its present orbit.
Oh yes, of course. One thing is not yet clear to me about the whole thing. You have now talked about planetary systems on several occasions, but I have noticed that in our SOL system, you talk about several planetary systems, for example, a planetary system of Uranus. On the one hand, this is a question that I wanted to ask you anyway, but on the other hand, it is also a question in response to your recent remarks on the subject, because I do not fully understand all that. We are here in the Sol system, and we do not have any planetary systems other than our individual planets here.
You see things from the wrong perspective. A planetary system is described as such when a large planet has smaller planets gathered and orbiting around it. The SOL system, however, is called this because SOL is the central sun and thus forms a whole system with all connected planetary systems. You can see from this that any major planet with a minor planet orbiting this planet is called a planetary system with the minimum number of 1, which is called a planetary system by us, while a central sun has at least one such planetary system orbiting it. Such a central sun usually has a certain name for all human life forms. Like your central sun is called Sol, for example, while you also name the planetary systems like Jupiter or Mars, etc. But SOL means that this is a central sun, a sun that has gathered several smaller planetary systems around it. All other planets or large planets belonging to this central sun are called planetary systems if they have at least one smaller planet of their own orbiting them. Because for the smaller planets, the large planet holding them is the mother system. So their sun is the shining one, and the mothering one.
Man, oh man, now I have made a mess. You know, you should have told me that before, because those things led to misunderstandings. According to your explanation, Jupiter and Saturn, for example, are planetary systems, right? And the planets of the planetary systems are probably the moons, right?
Sure, that is so.
Man, oh man, that is what is causing trouble. We do not call these planetary systems, but simply planets. A system, according to us, is a sun, a sol, which has different planets of different or uniform size, regardless of whether they still have their own satellites.
This is very illogical, but according to your values, you may go along with it. I am aware that you think of this in somewhat confusing form, which is why I have been trying for a long time to think according to your form in this respect, but this is not always easy for me. I am very sorry if you have been irritated by my previous statements. It certainly was not my intention.
I am convinced of that. But astronomers and other experts, etc., have got excited about it.
This is of no importance because such Earth humans do not yet understand how to work with logic and grasp the meaning of a higher language. They are not able to recognize the truth, and even less, to find out the truth from these statements, which is why they criticize and reject all things according to their ignorance, because as a rule, they want to be more knowledgeable than those who are truly better oriented. In the future, however, I will try to be more explanatory about such things and try to speak according to your terms, which I try to do all the time in many other respects, although I find it easiest when I use your form of speech and expression. So do not be sad.
I have noticed you do this on several occasions. I am not sad at all because I do not see why. It is just that misunderstandings can seem pretty bad. And that is exactly why I asked you again about the details of the destroyer and Venus. Just read the letter here. Because in here these questions have been raised by a psychologist. But again a question concerning the planetary systems that the destroyer hastens through. What do they mean? Are they somehow planetary systems of other fixed stars?
No, not at all. When I speak of distant planetary systems in connection with the comet, I mean the distant systems of the SOL system, because other fixed stars outside the SOL system cannot be reached by the destroyer in its orbit because they are much too far away.
So you really mean only our planetary systems like Uranus, Neptune, Jupiter and Saturn, etc.?
Certainly I am not talking about any other systems than these, according to your terms, planetary systems of the SOL system, if you understand it better that way.
That is clear. That is all I wanted to hear. There really should be no misunderstandings about this now. But one more question concerning the destroyer. Does it penetrate our planetary systems, or even our solar system at all during every passage?
Of course, this is always the case, but sometimes it passes the SOL so far away that it is hardly visible.
Oh, and has that also happened here and there in the last 12,000 years?
Absolutely.
Good, thanks. So, what do you think of this letter?
I find it very objective and reasonable. The questions are probably justified, because this Mr. Anderson seems to be trying to do these things in an open and honest manner. However, this wish here from Mrs. A personal contact with her will be just as impossible as with any other Earth human, except you. If she has any things to discuss, then she has to bring them to us through you so that we can answer them through you again. Incidentally, I have recently noticed that a number of things are unclear about Mrs. It is very unfortunate that Jacoby's wife is not convinced of the truth and blindly trusts in the deceitful machinations of this Adamski of yesteryear. Unfortunately, like very many Earth humans, she attaches much more importance to statements of Earth humans who deceive large masses of people by lying than to our statements, which are always preceded by a close verification. If, then, in such matters as those of Adamski, witnesses who are extremely suggestively influenced and deceived by hallucinations appear, they lose any real overview and blindly trust the fraudulent statements and machinations of the charlatans and fraudsters. With Mrs., not only for the things of us, She does an extensive and valuable job in every direction, but is badly deceived and cheated by various pseudo-contactees, unfortunately. But this can only happen because she is caught too much by the nature of different people, as with Adamski, for example, and then the unconsciously misguided witnesses do the rest.
That is really too bad. Then what about the manuscript she prepared?
She is very concerned about it, and it will be relevant, that is, if she actually puts it in print. However, she has rewritten many things and adapted them to her manner of thinking, which in our opinion is not a great disadvantage if she does not work in her way of thinking in relation to the bridge to freedom and stays with the facts and thus does not falsify anything for which the danger unfortunately exists in spite of everything.
Unfortunately, as time went by, Mrs. which she was supposed to transform into a book, with illogical and impossible things, assertions and philosophies of various religions, mainly with ritual concerns and philosophies of the bridges to freedom, in such a manner that the task of writing books, etc., based on the Simya say reports, had to be withdrawn from her. As a former and long-standing 20 years employee of Duist, Karl Veit, Wendler Verlag, Wiesbaden, who has become entangled in a sectarian fanatic dilemma and who therefore has all the skills and connections in relation to contacts with the Pleiadian, and thus also with Billy, had to be prohibited. She was caught in Veda's sectarian fanaticism, and at the same time, ambivalent and fanatically biased in other fanatical sects. For example, in the Bridge to Freedom, etc. Supplement 2002 Ptei, Mrs.
The result, however, is not a book for the initiated, but one for the broad masses. This also lies in her interest, and accordingly, the existing material that has been worked through by her so far is analogous and of value. It is to be paid a praise to her about it, even if she often looks for errors in my explanations where none exist. But this only happens because she is not able to grasp certain statements in their value, because they do not fall within her field of knowledge, and on the other hand are held in our understanding-based level.
That is good praise. I am sure she will be delighted.
She may be.
It will come to light. But tell me, what did you mean when you explained that Otto Muck was not very responsive to certain concerns?
It is very simple. Otto Muck is already divorced from this world and in the realm beyond. Therefore, he is no longer addressable because he would have to be disturbed in his present form of existence, but this is not permitted and not possible, even if there were real profound reasons for it.
Oh well, I just thought he did not want to talk about such things because he might reject them.
Have you not read the report you brought me?
Yes, but only afterwards to the right extent. I found out that he had already died. But now I would have something else. Can you tell me what Hans Jacob's personalities were in his earlier lives? And above all, what personality he was in his last life?
I would have to check it out first. If it is important to you, I will do it.
I would like it very much, because it is important to us. It would also be equally important if you could do some research on Mr. A. Schneider in Munich. He asked for it himself.
I would like to, but he will have to be patient. But please spare me further such concerns in the future, for it is not good for Earth humans to be oriented about the personality and the concerns of their former lives. If knowledge of these things becomes necessary, then they will experience it through their own memories. For Mr. Schneider, I can only make an effort because I know that it will serve him well. The man is no stranger to us, for he is honest in his efforts to do many things.
That is very pleasing and is also my impression of him. But while we are at it, in Munich, Engineer H. Ries claims that he is in telepathic connection with you. Is that true?
But no, that is not so. Mr. Rees, of whom I still have some material for processing, unfortunately suffers from very strong imaginations, which are originally from his misdirected hierarchical philosophy, Bridge to Freedom. Unfortunately, he has buried himself so much in his hierarchical philosophy that he rejects any reality of spiritual truth.
Too bad. But I would also have been surprised if you had really had telepathic contacts with him and you had not informed me about it. But tell me once, how many people in Europe are actually in teleprojective contact with you, Plear, and at the moment in a conscious form?
2.
Are these men or women?
They are 2 female beings, one of whom is a Mata.
Aha, and how many other contacts in conscious teleprojective form do the Plear maintain around the world?
In really conscious form, so that the Earth humans know this, only the 2 are total, a Mata and the other woman.
Can I get the other woman's name?
Sure, but you cannot call her. It is this one person named...
You are making me crazy. But tell me, do you, Plearin, have any other personal contacts with Earth humans besides me?
No, and you know the reason why.
Okay, I am already calm. Now look at these black and white photos. These are the pictures that Hans Schutzbach took when we were allowed to film and photograph at night. Can you explain to us why you only see these very funny light figures on it, but not your illuminated ship?
These are very interesting pictures. No, it is not understandable to me. Are these really pictures of my ship?
Night demonstration flight of Simyase's jet ship in Winkelried near Wetzikon. Taken from a distance of approx. 1,500 millers with an open aperture, which allowed the flight maneuvers to be imaged. Photo Hans Schutzbach. Another image of the night demonstration flight of Simyase's beam ship in Winkelried near Wetzikon. Photo Hans Schutzbach.
Certainly. I and Mr. Moosbrugger have also captured crazy apparitions, although we have only seen your ship.
It is puzzling to me. May I register the images?
What do you mean with that?
I will transfer the image forms to a device, after which we can then try to make an analysis.
Agreed, because we ourselves are very excited about the solving of the mystery. But can you not do this transfer later, because I have other questions?
Certainly.
Good. We have already noticed several times that the grass and bushes, etc., are pressed down anti-clockwise in a spiral inwards to the center, when the landing supports of your and Ketzel's ship are lowered down. That is not understandable to us, because, as I have seen, the plates of the landing supports do not rotate.
It is very simple. The round surfaces of the landing supports, like the whole ship, vibrate in a spiral-shaped anti-gravity vibration, which, as you have rightly observed, forms counterclockwise from the outside to the center. The underside of the ship has 4 such centers, 3 of which are located in the landing supports, while the 4th forms the center of the ship in the underside part.
Well, that sounds quite plausible. But how is it that the grass or undergrowth does not stand up again after some time, but grows unchanged for weeks in its spiral path along the ground? We now have tracks that are more than 4 weeks old, and that have not changed in the least. The new grass and undergrowth, etc., simply grows up again between the spirally curved stalks.
This is also very easy to explain. The anti-grav swinging wave, which is much stronger than the gravitational vibration of the planet itself, causes a gravitational change in the plant life forms. Thus, they hold themselves down by a very minimal anti-gravity force. That is to say, a counter-gravity, and counteract the normal gravitation of the Earth. Then they continue to grow lying in their spiral form, because the plant forms are not damaged by breaking off.
I really do not understand this, because according to your speech, the plants would then have to repel themselves from the Earth and not even press themselves down on it.
You think very illogically, but you have no knowledge about it. In these cases, the anti-gravity vibration does not lie under the plants, but on them. So if it presses them down from above and repels the gravitational force above them, the stalks remain lying. Of course, the gravitational force of the Earth itself also plays an important role, which makes its attraction effective.
I still do not understand this stuff. It is just over my head.
Do not get excited, for even earthly scientists are not yet able to grasp these things.
That is comforting. Then maybe I am not so stupid. Look here, this is a list from Manara. Can you answer the questions on that?
These matters fall within Quetzal's purview. I will ask him about them. He will tell you about it himself.
Okay, fine. Here I have some more questions. What support do Freemasons get?
You have asked me that question before, and I did not know the answer. In the meantime, however, I clarified these things. From outside the Earth, no help is available to them, neither in a material nor in a spiritual form. The aid that comes to them is purely of a material and natural to Earth form, as is the case with all other similar or similarly oriented organizations.
Well roared. That is comforting. Can you tell me how many chemical elements there are in the universe?
The number is unfortunately not known to me, and these things also do not fall into my field of knowledge. I would have to ask for it.
Then please do.
I will meet your wish.
The next question concerns elementary particles. How many are there?
As well, I must ask about that.
Wonderful. But now something very interesting. Some school children want to give you a kitten. Will you take this?
It is an extraordinary pleasure to hear this offer, but we are not allowed to do such things.
Too bad. Do you not keep pets and such?
Sure, we also have pets, even cats and dogs, which have been brought from the Earth to our Playaran worlds in former times, but which we do not keep in the living rooms, as you unhygienically and health-harmingly do. We must not, however, acquire terrestrial animals because they contain certain germs which no longer appear in our animals and which can also be transferred back to the animals through human life forms. This is a safety regulation, why we are not allowed to keep earthly animals.
I understand that, because we too have such provisions between our countries. But you would have the possibility of a complete disinfection, etc., would you not?
Sure, but it is our peoples and our understanding that determine whether we need an animal from another world. But such decisions only take place when it is a requirement for one of our worlds.
I see what you mean. My next question. Is there a material, fine material, all-pervading medium that we call ether?
But certainly you are informed about that.
The question did not come from me, because someone wanted to know from you. Now a question about Einstein's theory of relativity. What is wrong with it?
I am not allowed to give information about these things.
That is fine, thanks. Tell me, what kind of administration do you have on your Pleiars? I mean a government administration.
I told you that before. There is no administration here, only the High Council. Its form is to give high advice, but never an order or an enactment in commanding form.
I am aware of that. That is enough. What do you usually wear for shoes? But not always these boot things like you and the others, right?
Our footwear is similar to yours, but it does not consist of animal skins, but of materials that we artificially produce. So is the clothing. It is very similar to the one you will be using in about 70 years.
So for us, something like utopian or futuristic.
Not exactly, but purposeful, perhaps still somewhat strange for the terrestrial human being today.
I see. And how do you move about on your planet?
You are again very illogical, because I have already answered this question before.
Pardon me, then do not.
Excuse me, I have some important things to explain to you in a nutshell. In a few minutes, another one of our ships will land, one that will be a bit unusual in your eyes because it is a product of one of our other races. The ship is led by Manara 1, who is gentle in love, a young woman from the planet Daron from the Vega system. Manara takes over my task here on Earth for the time being, until the turn of the year. During this time, Quetzal, I, and the rest leave our station and Earth to return to our homeworlds. According to earthly terms, we take what you call a vacation.
Gosh, girl, this is a nice surprise. When are you going to buzz off?
According to earthly time, on the 15th of August.
Then I will see you again?
Sure, maybe I will also visit you one day.
That would be very sweet.
You feel pain blowing inside you.
Damn, that is my business after all.
You are just speaking from out of your fine spiritual perception. I am very sorry, but I also feel the same way. However, it is only a short farewell of time.
You say that so amusingly, just do not start crying about it.
Such sensations are often very difficult to control.
Tell me about it. Shit, damn it. I hope you can at least enjoy this girl.
That will certainly be so. Manara is very pretty, very dark-skinned and bubbly with joie de vivre. You will understand each other brilliantly.
Well, that reassures me. But that reminds me right away that I still have these 3 things for you here from our dear Cloverleaf.
Pay my dearest thanks for that. In the future, until the end of this year, Manara will communicate these things to me so the contact remains upright.
Very nice. Then I am curious about the Dark Beauty. How long will it be?
She will be here in about 3 minutes.
Splendid. What do you intend to do about the 1st of August for a demonstration?
Unfortunately, it will not be possible because we will hardly have time to do so. We have a lot of work with the handover of the station. Manara will later take control of such a demonstration for film purposes. This has already been determined.
Then even not that, too. It is no big deal. I can wait a long time. I have indeed learned it.
Certainly. By the way, send my greetings to Hans Schutzbach and explain to him that I have made an effort, but unfortunately only with a partial success. He already knows what I am saying.
Okay. Did you hatch something together?
I want to keep it a secret between him and me.
Accepted. It is none of my business.
You are always remarkably logical and courteous about things like this. It is Manara appears. She will be here in a few seconds.
Is that her ship on the screen?
Certainly.
Crazy. It really does look somewhat different.
I explained that to you.
It occurs to me that Plagia once wanted to drive with my vehicle, this barbaric bone-crushing apparatus. Does that fall into the water now? Will that still happen?
No, Plagia stays behind at the station. She has only been here a short time and has no need for a holiday. But look, there Manara comes up in the antigrav.
Manara is really very pretty, just like Simyase. Her skin is very dark, a very deep brown. She is about 10 centimeters smaller than Simyase and clearly has negroid features, just like the Hottentot. Simyase and Manara talk for a long time, during which I can get an idea of the girl. Only after about 10 minutes they turn to me.
This, my dear friend, is Manara.
You have studied me very carefully. Receive my love in greeting.
You speak like a saint, but I am very happy to meet you. Welcome to the world of the earthworms.
The poor girl is completely perplexed and consists only of question marks, so to speak. So Simyase turns to Manara laughing and speaks to her again for a longer time. Then Manara suddenly starts to laugh, as bright as a bell, and as cheerful as Simya-se.
You are very funny, and I take it that I have a lot to learn. Simya-se has just explained to me that you are often making quite strange jokes, which I will need a lot of time to learn. I will do my best, though.
That will happen.
Okay, so we are going to be at war with each other for the next few months, Manara?
For that, I would be sorry, and I do not know why.
He is still strange to you in these things, dear Manara, because with his words he wants to say that you will work together during the next months. In the days to come I will inform you in his manners of expression so that you will understand him and there will be no misunderstandings. You will simply have to learn to speak in his form of expression, which is very often quite unconventional.
I will endeavor to.
Then we will surely also get along brilliantly and have our fun. But now I would be surprised. You have such beautiful black eyes, which fit perfectly to your dark skin. Here on Earth, in Africa, we have a human race which we call the Hottentots, and which has quite significant European influences. Ascot once explained to me in former times that this mixture of races had developed with actual Negroes and whites, or something similar. Is that correct?
Our race actually originated in very early times on this earth because our ancestors mixed with earthlings and produced the so-called tribes of the Huns, who later joined together with Negro tribes in the African region for a very short time. From it, new races developed. So, among other things, over a very long period, lead to the Hottentot. Some of these tribes reconnected with our later ancestors and begat with them our race existing today.
Somewhat confusing, but somehow understandable.
You are just incorrigible.
Whatever you say. By the way, can you tell me what you call your mother tongue?
Do you think of our language today or of our original language?
The one which you speak today.
This is what we call Sarat.
A little weird. Is this Saratian a standard language?
On our world, yes, but not on all other worlds because, like with you, different languages prevail. But it is the case that all human life forms united with us speak a unified language, which you could call an intercosmos language.
Is that not a little far-fetched? Would not galactic be enough?
This language leads beyond our galaxy, and we call it the Kosan language.
Very nice. How is that with you, Manara? You certainly have a special language of your own, do you not? What do you call it?
Jinan.
Janan, I think that is pretty, too. Okay, again, a question for you. Simya-se. Recently, Amada had an experience with, can you give me clarification whether this is related to H. Jacob? Because the following has arisen.
This incident is unknown to me, but I will try and clarify everything before I leave the Earth.
Thank you very much. It would be very important for Amada to know this.
For today, it should be enough of the questions now. Besides, I have to transmit this conversation to you tonight, because in the next days I would not find enough time. Make sure you are ready between 3 HHRs and 3:30 HRs.
Okay, but can you maybe let go of a little light spell while flying away? You know, my friends are waiting over at the hill.
I do not want to have to decide.
I do not understand your words. What are you trying to say?
Only that.
Never mind, I will explain it to Manara.
Again, Simyase speaks in her mother tongue, or this intergalactic one. To Manara, who obviously understands quite quickly.
I have a lot to learn if I am going to understand you. But I will now go and perhaps give you joy. Goodbye.
Goodbye. to a fairly quick one. I was very pleased and pleasantly surprised by your appearance.
I feel the same, thank you.
The girl walks and disappears into the antigrav, which gently carries her down. A few seconds silence.
You already seem to have taken Manara to your heart.
Why would I not?
You are doing the right thing. But I would like to ask concerning Manara, not to embarrass her with many unusual questions. She has very little knowledge of earthly matters, because she first has to work her way into them, which will take a long time. Besides, it is her first time on Earth, and she has to find her way around here first.
Oh, goodness, I did not know that, or I would not have asked her about the Hottentots.
She is oriented about that, and you did not embarrass her. Remember, however, that I myself had to study intensively for 4 years before I was able to answer you. Now you really have to go, because you have to sit in front of your writing instrument right now.
Okay, I am going. Bye, girl, and until we meet again.
I would also like to tell you that tomorrow night, sometime I will be in the vicinity of your place of residence to introduce Manara to the various suitable landing places for her contacts with you. If it is possible, I will spread enough light during the flight so you can see us. But this should not be a promise, because the situation will determine whether we can do it or not. Now farewell and go in peace. Goodbye.
Take care, girl, and still very dear greetings from all who belong to us.
Your greetings please me very much, and I thank you.
Goodbye, then.
Goodbye, dear friend, and pay more attention to your health. You put it at great risk.
Okay, take care.